something that we wanted to discuss was suffering and how actually crucial it is to really breaking ourselves down and to the point where we come back stronger. So it's almost like in the period of growth, if it's like growth is not linear by any means. It's not the way that in my experience things have occurred. It's been like, oh no. But then when you actually arise out of it, it's like way higher than you were.
I have a model that I always think of whenever I think of suffering and doing better, or like doing better and doing worse. So the way I look at it is, let's say this is your baseline. Then from here you might suffer, but then you get better, right? And then when you hit your peak right about here, then you go back to living normal, but it's here, right? So then you continue that pattern, right? So you get a little better, and then you hit this high, and you're like, whoa. But then you come back down here. Then you get higher, and come back down here. But the idea is every time you reset your default mode, it's just so much better than it ever used to be. By this point, my default mode is like better than I could have accessed in like the greatest day a few years back.
But the most essential part of that is understanding that suffering is part of that process, and instead of necessarily beating yourself up or dwelling or understanding, having tools that work for you so that you can learn to reflect and you can learn why you're suffering or the meaning or how to actually draw purpose or become more resilient. There are many practices, there are many tools essential for everyone's process, everyone's progress that are different. And without them, that process of growth doesn't necessarily happen. It's not the easiest thing in the world by any means. So it's really essential to be open and continue as we grow, as we continue to learn, what works for us.
Yeah. And this is why you always hear about lotuses in Eastern philosophies. Because the lotus is an extremely beautiful flower that emerges from the muck. It's just transmutating the energy, because it can't be created or destroyed, right? But it can be changed into one thing or another. And that's also the idea behind alchemy, to turn base metals into gold. So you take something that's happened in your life. Jacko and I have both struggled with mental health, or we're working with mental health. But honestly, without that, I wouldn't be the person I am today. Without those like real moments of suffering and really having to look at myself and who I am and what I really want to do, kind of getting lost in the ocean of just being, really helps you find yourself. And yeah, like Jacko was saying, there's so many things that you can do to come about that. Massive one is mindfulness.
Yeah, another thing that we don't talk about enough, because it's almost something that has become ingrained in us, thankfully, is the essential ideal of not comparing yourself to others. And that just continues to pop up, especially with social media, where you're just constantly exposed to the quote-unquote best version of people. It's so easy when you're struggling or going through something negative to just be scrolling through your phone mindlessly, yet subliminally, subconsciously you see, oh my god, this person's so happy, what am I doing wrong, my life sucks, or it's like, we've been there. Easy, like this week I was there, and it's really understanding, having that ingrained in you, to not compare yourself. You are your own individual, you have your own situation, you have your own suffering, just like that person who might seem like the happiest person. They have their own things they're self-conscious about. They have their suffering. Every single person does. Unless they're a saint, but we're not there, so.
Yeah, saints even have their struggles. So Buddha was a prince before, and he was sheltered from everything, but then he realized there was more to life, so he went out and like put himself into poverty and put himself through all this struggle, and then he was just so much happier after he reached enlightenment. So when he just had everything he could have ever hoped for, no suffering, no struggle, no strife, he was completely unfulfilled. He goes out into the world, he sees a dead man, he realizes that there is lots of suffering in life. The first tenet, life is suffering. But then there's a way to overcome that suffering. But the critical point is that without that suffering, there's nothing to overcome, so there's no way to become the better version of yourself. It's just like the hero's journey. The hero starts at home, and then they have a call to action, so they go and they struggle and they do their thing, and then they return home, but they return home now a hero instead of just a protagonist.